Hello and welcome to another one of our episodes of Industry Interviews, where we've got an absolutely fantastic guest with us this evening. My name is Lance Nilsson. I'm one of the co-founders of the Outcast Creative, a loose-knit group of actors, writers and directors and other creatives from actually all over the world, not just the UK, but with classes in London and Birmingham. I've got a couple of co-host guests with me tonight. First of all, none other than Gary Bolter from Down Under, who is the head of our Outcast chapter in Australia. Fantastic honour, Gary, that you carry for us there. Hi. How are you, Gary? Introduce yourself.
Oh, my God.
Contestant number one, what do you do and where do you come from?
Well, I'm 51 years old. I'm from Kilburn and I moved to Australia. Oh, incidentally, before we go any further, Lance, it's my birthday today.
You're joking?
Yes.
Fantastic. Maybe we can convince Phil to sing you happy birthday. Here he was in a musical once, I believe. So fantastic stuff. So you're 52 today?
51 today.
51. You're nearly as old as Suzette Pluck.
Stop it! How dare you?
Yeah, here she is. We've got the head of the Birmingham chapter with us as well today, Suzette Pluck. I'm just going to amend your name, Suzette. Great to have you with us again tonight. It's funny how, I was doing top 10 westerns yesterday. No one was available. But I'm doing an interview with Phil Davis today. Funnily enough, like 50 of the Outcasts were available for that. Coincidence? I don't know. It's just but never mind. I'll get them. What's wrong with a good Western? Nothing wrong with a good Western. I'm sure Phil likes Westerns. He strikes me as a man that likes a good Western.
Can't go past Blazing Saddles.
We'll find out. We'll find out shortly. So Suzette, what's happening with the Outcasts in Birmingham just quickly?
It's gaining momentum, and I've got a core stable of students now. 2 of them have changed their occupations so they can take their acting more seriously. Oh. A third has come to me and wants your advice, Lance, because he really wants to go for it. And each week I stretch them even further than they could imagine in a short space of time. And one of them's attending a drama school now in London on a Sunday because he felt confident enough to go for his auditions. So it's going very, very well. It's a lot of fun.
Great stuff. Wow. I think my advice to him would be run now or face a life of poverty. But if you're passionate about it and that's what you want to do, then, absolutely. But
quite right.
Be prepared for some rough with the smooth. But yeah, and we're also we're gearing up to do our first co-production between Outcasts, London and Birmingham on stage. We're going to be tackling the British Post Office scandal, which is a massive injustice. I'm not going to talk about that loads tonight because I don't want to take up time away from our fantastic guest who's giving up his evening. But we're going to talk about that another time. But that's going to be the Outcast stage production on stage, a real stage, as opposed to all the stuff we had to do online in lockdown. We've also got the Tweet, which is an online play that we're going to do as well. That's loosely based on the firing of Gina Carano from the Star Wars franchise. So some interesting social topics coming up with our work, as always. But I think now, without any further ado, Gary, drum roll sound effect, please. Thanks very much. I'm glad we got that. Really, it's good that you got that in your computer. Let's welcome Mr. Phil Davis to the stream. Here he is.
Hello.
Oh my God, Phil.
That's fantastic. Phil, so good to see you. And again, on behalf of all of us and the other regular Outcasts, just want to say thank you so much for giving up your time, coming and do this interview and giving our channel a fantastic guest for people to tune in. You've just actually told us that you recently cut a reel together that's a compilation of all your work, and it's 50 minutes long, and that represents 10 minutes per decade that you've been in the industry. And you've got, how many credits have you got on IMDb?
I have absolutely no idea. I have credits
153
that I can't even remember. But no, the 50-minute reel was to celebrate my 50th year as an actor, because I got my first professional job in 1972. So I thought I'd put something together, not really for a professional thing, but more for my family, so my kids could see it, because they find it very difficult to watch me on the TV. So I put it together, but I had to leave a lot out.
Yeah, I can imagine. And of those, we're going to show a quick clip of some of your work now. And thanks for the people that are watching already. And of course, this is going to stay up on our stream. I know a lot of people have said they're out tonight, being that Thursday is the new Friday. But you can watch it later on our channel, of course. But here's a short, not a 50-minute reel, more like a 2-minute reel of some of the amazing work that Phil has done over the years. Take a look at this.
You say if I'll stick up for you next time someone says you're an happy old freak. You mean I'm not, you thieving mongrel? No, not because you ain't, but because Kit Nubbles says so.
I want a lawyer.
Why, son? Do you want to make a will?
You ain't gonna be tight, arse, are you? I ain't had a decent block for days.
Now, what happened then? You get banged up in Margate or something?
I got banged up in Shepherd's Bush. My old man, he ain't let me out the house since Margate, has he? He even put a padlock on my scooter, right?
Utterly incredible. It's a conflicting mass of misinformation.
But if we don't matter, does it? Because Jamie Robe was just a poor little nobody from Bermondsey, and we can quietly forget all about him.
You know that's not what we're suggesting, Tony.
Jamie Robe's life mattered. Maybe not to you, but to some people. I'm sorry.
Oh, she's gone for a walk with him. She wouldn't go, would she, if she didn't like him? Would she?
He should take her out dancing.
I don't think he's that tight.
Can't see Reg dancing. She'd come back black and blue, would she?
Sue.
Lawley, Shakespeare and the Bible, spot on.
What would your luxury be, Peter?
Duvet, maybe marmalade, and the music. Go on, ask me, what's the music?
What's the music, Peter?
8 straight Verdis. Why?
Why?
I'll tell you.
You tell us.
Because you saw with Mr. V, Shakespeare, the Bible, Giuseppe V, life.
You're going to be a very good godfather.
I'm going to be a very good godfather. Other godfathers will weep when they see how good I am. You chose right, both of you.
Wow. I mean, you must get stirred a bit emotionally watching back some of those.
Yeah, trip down memory lane. Mr. Quilp, the first thing, that was with Anthony Newley. That was the first film I ever did. That was in, I think, 1973, which is a lifetime away. Yeah. And The Professionals, that was the first episode of The Professionals that was ever made.
Oh, wow, that was the pilot.
Yeah, well, it was a pilot. It didn't go out first, but it was the pilot. And when we first shot it, it was Martin Shaw and Anthony Andrews.
Mm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's right. And then, of course, that didn't work out.
Redo it all again because they decided that the chemistry wasn't right. Yeah.
I think that was probably one of the best casting decisions in the history of British television.
Yes.
Because God rest his soul, the late Lewis Collins, it just worked.
Yeah, it did. Yeah, and they needed they had 2 sensitive ones. They needed a tough one in there. So
and he hadn't been to drama school, and he wasn't part of the RADA set. And I mean, where did you train?
I didn't train. I didn't go to a drama school.
Oh wow!
My story is interesting, really, because I'm from a working class family in a council estate in Essex. My dad was a factory worker. We were an ordinary working class family. And I got it into my head that I wanted to be an actor when I was a very young kid. I mean, 10 or 11, before I left primary school. I could read out loud and stuff. And I think one of my teachers said to my mum, "Oh, he's a born actor," or something at some parents' meeting. And I just clinged on to this idea that I could be an actor. I had no idea what being an actor would be like. We didn't go to the theatre or the cinema very much. And I got involved in secondary school in school plays and amateur dramatics and all that. but it made us sort of uncomfortable adolescents, because I always thought I was hanging on to this ridiculous dream, and at my school, we did school plays and all that, but I wasn't playing Hamlet or Richard III or any of those things. So I wasn't like a star one to watch, and I was very small and squeaky with a Cockney accent you could cut with a knife. And it seemed, I felt like one of those kids who says he wants to play football for England, who could barely scrape into his school side, but I hung on, and I got into the National Youth Theatre, although I didn't really distinguish myself very much, except in my final season, when I was 17 or 18, I had a decent part in a Peter Turson play. And the National Youth Theatre was starting a professional company called the Dolphin Theatre Company. And I thought they might hire me as an actor. They were doing a Romeo and Juliet with Sinead Cusack. And so I went to Mike Croft, who was running the youth theatre. I said, could I play this small part called Peter, who was the Capulet's servant? And he said, let me think about it. Because I was working at the Shore Theatre in the coffee bar there. And he thought about it for a week and then said no. And he said, we don't think you should pursue a career as a professional actor because we don't feel you have the range. And of course, it was devastating, because these were people who knew me and all that. And a couple of weeks later, I answered an advert in the back of the Stage newspaper. And I went down to meet Joan Littlewood at Stratford East. And she took me on and she liked me and she kept me for a year. I'd always sort of meant to go to drama school, but it was complicated because I didn't have the requisite O-levels, like GCSEs, O-levels in those days, to get a grant from the local council. And so it was impossible for my parents to pay for me to go to drama school. But when I went to Joan, it was a real advantage not having trained, because she worked in such an idiosyncratic way. And that was my sort of launch pad.
Well, working.
Sorry, I apologize.
No, working under no. This is your time. Working under Joan, I mean that of itself would have kind of been. That's like doing a year in rep, which is what people used to do to kind of learn their craft. So I mean, sounds like to me you kind of skipped one part, but got a bonus with another part.
That's the case, yeah. And she was so sort of inspirational. And she made you believe in yourself and all that. And I learned, how to improvise and muck about. And also, the script went out the window on the first day of rehearsals, and we would improvise and extemporize. And there were always songs in the shows. And I was never scared about not knowing what was going on, because I never quite knew what was going on, And so it taught me this sort of pragmatism that, whatever was going on, I would join in with it. And I think if I'd trained, I would have found it very, very much more difficult, because, you're supposed to have a technique and there's things you're supposed to do and all that. We didn't do any of that. And we just sort of, you kind of stood on the high board and held your nose and jumped. And that was a great lesson. I mean, I'm saying this in retrospect. I don't think I realized it at the time, but it made me kind of fearless. And later on in my career, I was working with, directors like Bill Gaskell and Edward Bond and Mike Leigh, all very different. But I was never worried about switching from one set of rules or regulations to another. It was fine. I just sort of went with the flow, and I learned that from Joe.
Fantastic. Before I get onto some quick fire questions, which I want to cover before we delve into some particular IMDb credits, and Wall of Silence is going to be one of those. I'm just going to bring in the other co-founder of the Outcast, Dickon Tolson, who's just arrived. So fantastic. I think you know Dickon from the Anna Scheer crowd, and also, be fair to say, a working class actor like yourself in many respects. Good to have you on board, Dickon. We've got to
be here. Sorry, I'm late. I was trying to change privacy and settings on my computer, and it hasn't worked, so I'm on my phone, unfortunately.
Me and Phil had a fantastic time testing that very subject this afternoon. So don't worry, you're in good company in that respect. Phil, I'm going to fire some quick questions at you. If you can't answer them, don't worry. It's not a test. It doesn't reduce your prizes that you can select at the end of the interview.
I can't promise a quick answer.
No, I'm quite happy for you to give us by all means, give us a long answer, but some of them are pretty quick. So, what was the very first film you remember seeing at the cinema?
Zulu.
Ah, what a choice! Fantastic. What was the very first play that you went to see on the stage, or that you can remember?
The very first play, it was at Hornchurch Rep, and it was a production of The Royal Hunt of the Sun. And I hated every minute of it. I kept thinking, why are they behaving like that? I couldn't understand. It was, everyone thought I'd love it because it was, very theatrical and all that, but I didn't. I hated it. That's
all right. It inspired you to do better, I'm sure. What was the last play that you saw on the stage?
Oh, I saw a fantastic play at the Park Theatre just a couple of weeks ago called Clybourne Park.
Ah, I've seen the poster for that.
By an American author. It was really brilliant and fantastically acted. And it's finished now, so I can't recommend it. But
that's annoying. When you were younger and you started getting into the acting game, who were the actors of your day that inspired you or were your screen idols?
Well, this is interesting because I didn't really have any heroes or people I wanted to emulate or follow or whatever. For me, the great thing about acting was doing it. Something happened to me when I did it. It was a great release. That I don't know what it says about a kid who's more comfortable pretending to be someone else than he is pretending to be himself. But that was me. And there were actors I admired, and liked, but there was nobody I kind of hero worshipped.
No, I don't. Maybe not so much that, but who were the people you admired?
Well, there were actors. I remember I was a big fan of Alfie Bass, and Ronald Lacey was another. These are just ordinary working actors, not big film stars. And I've always liked plays and films and TV things about real life with real people.
Ronald Lacey, for those people watching, appeared in Indiana Jones Raiders of the Lost Ark and was one of the villains that got his hand burnt in that. So here's a good question. Would you ever consider acting in a two-hander on stage with your wife, Eve Matheson?
I would consider it, of course. She's very good.
That is something I definitely would pay to see. What are some of the benchmark shows, in your opinion, and I'm talking television here, the benchmark shows of British drama that stick in your mind that you think, God, that was good, whether you were part of it or not?
Our Friends in the North.
Yes! My number one choice every time.
All the play for today. So I rather mourn the lack of single dramas on TV. I mean, they were mixed, they weren't all brilliant, but every so often there would be one that would, change your life because it was so fantastic. I've never been a big fan of soaps, but I think Our Friends in the North really caught me. I remember a show called Callan. Do you remember that with Edward Woodward? That struck me. I didn't want to miss that.
And they did a feature.
I'm very old. I've seen so much stuff over the years. I can barely remember some of it.
Well, the ones that are really good tend to stick in your head, and they did a feature film of Callum as well.
Yeah.
And Edward Woodward was a big tabletop gamer like me. Yeah. And one of the final scenes, I don't know if you remember, is he has a face-off with the villain who's got a big model of the Battle of Waterloo in his house, and he's trying to beat the villain at this game with all these soldiers on the tabletop. So,
I particularly remember the opening credits. There was a light bulb swinging in and some very atmospheric music. It's fantastic.
You've done quite a few plays. Roughly how many?
Oh, I don't know how many.
Lots.
Recently, I just did a season of short plays by Harold Pinter at what's now called the Pinter Theatre, was the Comedy Theatre, and I did two of those. And,
right.
A few years ago, in 2017, I gave my Ebenezer Scrooge in A Christmas Carol for the Royal Shakespeare Company.
Oh man, I'm so glad. I'm really like. I would have loved to have seen that. I imagine
everybody said when I said I was playing Scrooge, they all said perfect casting. I thought,
because they remember your little John from Robin Hood, I think.
Yeah.
So that the segue to the next quick question on that was, what was your most embarrassing moment on stage in a play?
The most embarrassing moment I always remember when I was in the National Youth Theatre. I was in the Scottish play. I'm going to say the title. I don't believe in all that nonsense. Macbeth. And my job was to put a stall down on for one of the lords to sit on. I was just a spear carrier, really. And they had these little luminous paint marks. But when I put the stall down, I put it right on the luminous marks. So in the black, when I came on to get the stall off, I couldn't find it. And the lights came up with me going like this in the dark. I got a huge laugh and a major bollocking from the director.
Equally, your most embarrassing moment on a set, be that film or television?
Oh, I don't think I've ever had an embarrassing moment on the trot.
Oh, come on! It's only live on YouTube. No one's watching.
Well, you know, when you corpse and you can't stop corpsing, that's it. That's embarrassing, and that's happened a few times with some actors. You know, once or twice forgotten my lines and all that. But I've always felt really comfortable on a film set, so I don't really get embarrassed, even when I mess up.
Yeah, no.
The corpsing thing is, I'm glad you've pointed that out, because that's happened to a couple of my students. There's two of them. I'm not going to name it. No, I will. Vic and Neil, when they're in a scene together, they do this thing where they can't stop laughing. And it's reassuring.
Terrible. Because the more you feel you didn't ought to laugh, and people say, "No, come on, pull yourselves together," the worse it gets. The best thing is just to take 5 minutes and laugh it out, you know.
Yes, yeah, that's what we do. Well, they get on the naughty step.
Yeah,
Suzette, I love that. There's these two students. I'm not going to name them. Oh, okay, Rick and Neil. Anyway,
Vic and Neil, get it right.
You are looking to expand the numbers in Birmingham. Yeah, just checking.
But, you know, if you didn't have a sense of humour, you couldn't really be an actor. So
that's right.
Absolutely. And if you can't laugh at yourself, then you know you shouldn't really be in the job. Last question on the quick fire round, perhaps more of a reflective one, is, and I know my answer to this. In fact, I've got two. Which actor, British actor, who is no longer with us, do you miss seeing on our screens the most?
Oh, I don't know. I don't have an answer to that question. I don't.
Because
what's yours?
Well, I got two. I had a list on my wardrobe for a really long time. I had 20 people on it of people I want to work with in my lifetime, and of course you are on that list in the top 10. I also need to add. One of them was Alan Rickman, who just completely shocked when we lost him, because he didn't tell anybody he was ill, really, from what I understand, and that was why he. One of his main last jobs was him directing a film which he always wanted to do, and then the other one, of course, is Damian Lewis's wife, Helen, who you got to work with on North Square.
10 episodes of North Square, yeah.
And she was, for those people watching, she was the female lead in Peaky Blinders, and my God, I mean, she made that show. I thought, it wouldn't have been the same show without her. And
she was a fantastic actress and a great fun, lovely to work with. Really,
I heard that about both of them as well, and everybody always says that about you, which is always very nice to know. So I've got some questions about your career, but I'm gonna, before I dive into all them, Gary, you've got a couple of questions, so fire one, please.
Sure. 50 years in the business. What keeps you going? Is it just the kind of the youthful exuberance of, you know, being on set, being in plays? What keeps you going, mate?
It's a combination. One is I have to keep going. I mean, otherwise I'd starve. There's always that. And
paychecks help.
I had my children quite late in life, so my youngest child is just 20 now and at university, and she needs feeding too. But really, seriously, in answer to your question, is that I love it. It's all I ever wanted to do when I was a kid. And, if I'm in a car going to a set in the morning and I've got a good scene to play, then I'm excited and happy. And I miss it when I'm not working. Of course, I don't say I've stayed the same after 50 years. I'm not the same animal. I'm not the same beast. And there's not quite the same enthusiasm as I had when I was 20. But I do genuinely enjoy working with other actors and directors, and this business of pretending to be somebody else and going into that and investigating other people's lives is endlessly fascinating and a great joy and a great honor, really, to be able to do that for a living. My old man went off on his bike every day to a soap factory to clean the machinery. I'm doing this, so it's a fantastic life when you're working, and I'm very blessed.
Great answer to that. Dickon, question?
Yeah, I've got 2 lines of inquiry. I'm going to
2 lines of inquiry.
But
Phil, you want to get your solicitor quickly, just in case?
I'll keep one for later.
All right.
The last time I was in your presence, Phil, was at Blood on the Carpet, showing at the Crouch End Playhouse, I think, down in and it was Graham's film that he did with Annie Birkin. I think you were sitting next to Dexter at the back of the screen. First of all, I just wondered what you thought about that film in particular. There was one shot in particular I really loved, and that type of production, and what advice or encouragement could you give to similar filmmakers, to people like Graham that are out there fighting guerrilla style to get their self-expression over to the masses, as it were?
Before you answer that, Phil, just for those people watching, Graham, who Dickon is referring to, is actually the late Graham Fletcher-Cook, and we both taught at his drama class, his improv drama class at Jackson's Lane, and Graham did actually inspire the foundation. His passing inspired the foundation of the Outcast. So without Graham in our lives, the Outcast Creative never would have happened.
I knew the family. I've known them for years. I knew Dexter. We were in the Bounty film in 1983 together. And I knew his mum, who was an agent.
Wendy,
yeah. And I was very pleased when Graham managed to get the film together. I mean, it was a mixed bag, Blood on the Carpet. It wasn't entirely successul, but it had enough about it to see that, had he gone on to make other films, there would have been something interesting about them. But the independent sector of what I call the sort of micro budget films, I think is tremendously important. And everything's changed now because we don't shoot on film, and there's, you can make a film on your iPhone now if you're clever enough, and it's almost like the kind of democratization of the medium, and it's always been difficult to raise money for low budget films with no stars in them and all that, and the experimental kind of angle, but it is possible. And I think it's tremendously exciting when people get it together, whether it's a short film or a feature film. I've just done a short film for a guy I know. I if I can help, I do it, I don't expect a fancy caravan or a limousine to pick me up. And those films are, they're the filmmakers of tomorrow. And it will be a mixed bag. They won't all be successful, but every so often someone will come up with something that will inspire a whole generation of young filmmakers. There are original voices out there, and you have to listen and give them a go. And And I think that bit of the business, you know, the film industry has changed. You're either, there's no middle anymore. You either got a proper budget, you know, or you got nothing at all.
Yeah.
The middle has disappeared. And because you got nothing at all doesn't mean you can't make a film. It just means you have to pull a lot of favors and you have to be tremendously creative and inventive with what you've got. But it doesn't mean it's not possible. I mean, you know, if you can write a script that's set in one place, like one big house or something, and is exciting enough and will hold an audience's attention, then it can be done. And so I think, you know, I think what Graham did was tremendous. And there are other people doing it, and all power to them as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah,
that's a good time to personally thank you, Phil, for attaching yourself to a couple of our projects and scripts that I've written. One of which, of course, I wrote especially for you and had to twist your arm a bit and do a few rewrites. But we're quite hopeful we might get the money for that soon.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah, well, you just never know in this industry, do you? So that brings me, Dick, and I'll save your other question for later then. I want to talk about a couple of major flashpoints in your career, if I may. And I'm going to put this handy thing up on the screen now. Although I've been aware of your career for a long time, it was particularly your performance in 2004's Wall of Silence that made me think, shit, I better hurry up and work with this guy, man, because you know I've got to get my speed on. Unfortunately, I was straight into hospital with a coma not long after that, so that plan got a bit derailed. But Wall of Silence is very similar to the type of work I write. It's a true story drama about the murder of Jamie Robe, who was killed just outside the Osprey estate in Rotherhithe, beaten up by a group of boys. It was quite weird this week when I was just looking into the history of that film and also the case and everything again, to learn that one of my friends somebody on my friends list on Facebook is friends with the brother of one of the perpetrators. So that was interesting. You know, that's the sort of piece that comes along once in a while. And in some jobs, it's just a paycheck. But something like that is where you get to make a tangible difference in people's lives. And you know that your performance is going to have an impact, not only on the person that you're playing, but the other characters that were represented. And of course, you played D.I. Tony Cottis, who was the man in charge of investigating Jamie's murder, and you played opposite Jimmy Nesbitt, who played his father. Some very emotional scenes, and at different times, what I really like about the story, I mean, okay, it's a real story, so maybe like isn't the right word, but you both have an arc where at one point you're supporting him emotionally, and then he ends up supporting you further along, and you know, that was an arc I hadn't seen in any of your other work. I mean, could you talk about how you approached that? Did you meet the real people? If so, how much did that influence your performance? And I might have a couple of other questions about it, but let's just start with that.
Yes, I did meet Mr. Cottis. We had a drink together, and this was years after the event, but he still keeps a little photograph of Jamie Robe in his wallet. And it was one of those unusual cases for him that it became personal. He was so appalled about what had happened and about the response on the estate, because everybody knew who'd done it, but nobody was willing to talk. That was the title, Wall of Silence. And it was his job to try and get people to open up. And I was just struck by the ordinary workaday decency of this man who wanted to make a difference and nick the kids that had done it. And that was the starting point for me. I mean, there was nothing sort of flashy or heroic about this man. He was just an ordinary bloke doing his job. but he wasn't going to stop. And when the character that Stephanie Leonardis played, who he finally managed to persuade to talk, they moved her to a safe house, and it was a terrible place. There was no fridge and cooker. He bought a fridge and a cooker for this girl out of his own pocket because he didn't want her to run away from the witness protection program. And so, it's just one of those unusual cases where he had a kind of emotional investment in it, because he was so appalled by the callousness and the senselessness of this terrible crime. And it looked like they were all going to walk away, and everybody laughing at him. And it was a sort of emotional roller coaster ride, really. It was brilliantly directed, I thought, by Chris Menault, and was, Jimmy's a big star, so it was a great success. And it's a shame, really, that it wasn't put out in the cinema. I think it might have had a life there, really. I guess it would have shot it differently if it had been for the cinema. But it certainly made a splash. Yeah.
I mean, it's funny. The whole film is available on YouTube to watch, I believe, legally. I'm just going to say, and I agree. I think actually, both that and the film about the murder of Stephen Lawrence, and there's an interesting connection between the two of these in a way. They came out not that long apart from each other, and they're quite similar movies about two crimes that have a lot of similarities in the landscape of London that we're living in even today.
Yeah.
And both of which could have had cinema releases, but didn't, probably because they thought it might be too controversial. I think I'm right in thinking that the Lawrence murder and all the stuff that was going on around that also detracted from the potential publicity that Jamie Robe's murder got. In fact, it got virtually none, if I remember rightly.
It was tremendously complicated because it was a real case, and not everybody that had been prosecuted was convicted of the crime. I mean, I think there were three of them that were convicted, and the others got off.
Yeah.
So it was a legal nightmare for the writer and the producers.
Yeah,
So lots of things you couldn't say, and lots of things you couldn't do, and all that. So we didn't get sued. But it was Jeff Pope, I think, wasn't it? Yeah. And he does a lot of these, making drama out of real events, and so he was quite experienced in it. And it was interesting for me because actually, I at the same time they offered me that, I was offered another job, which was a 6-part series, which would have been very much more lucrative. And I remember sitting there, and I had the 6-part series on one hand and All of Silence on the other, and I thought, I've got to do All of Silence. Just got to do it.
I think it's really.
Can I say, I watched it earlier this week, and it resonated deeply with me because it was that kind of energy. What was happening in London was why I left London to bring up my children in Birmingham.
Right.
And at the end of the film, it's one of the first times I've seen an actor that looks deeply impacted on a cellular level, the impact of the character. And I couldn't work out if the actor was wounded or the character was wounded. It was so powerful, your performance. So I just wanted to commend you on that because I was just deeply moved by the whole story anyway. But I don't think I've ever seen an actor that looked wounded. And how was the impact on you after playing a role like that?
Well, I've been doing it a long time, and you do these things and then you let them go.
Mm-hmm.
I play a lot of different characters, and so a lot of them aren't very nice. And I don't get any more affected by the bad guys as I do by the good guys. And but the object is for you to feel it, not for me.
Yeah.
And
so it worked.
And also to do that character, that police officer, D.S. Cottis, to do him justice, because it was his doggedness and his refusal to look away, and I felt a real. I felt I had to not let him down.
Yeah,
that was the object for me.
Can I just ask, when it was filmed, was it actually shot around that area, or did they double somewhere else in London for it? Do you remember?
I don't think it was shot on the actual estate, but it was quite close by.
Oh right, okay. So that part of London and all the rest of it. That's interesting. And how many weeks did it take to shoot it, and was it shot in order, more or less?
It wasn't shot in order. I mean, films very rarely are shot.
No, I know. Yeah,
because of locations and stuff.
Yeah,
and it was a modest shoot. I mean, I think it was about 4 weeks. So it wasn't a big thing, but it was nicely done, I thought.
The two British actors that played your kind of two DIs was Jay Simpson and my other friend from London's Burning. His name's just gone out of my head now. He's going to hate me. They did a great job, and I think they're both massively underrated.
Well, he plays poker, doesn't he?
You know I'm talking about both of them. We're both having brain farts at the minute, but he's on my friends list on Facebook.
I can't remember anybody's name.
But Jay Simpson was great.
Yeah,
Simon Cox, who's been watching the stream, who's an independent filmmaker like myself, by the way, just wanted to say to you, very inspiring, Phil. Great advice. I'm a massive fan. So Simon, give Phil a lead. If he really wants lead parts, give Phil a lead on your film. I know you're working on it. It's a science fiction. I'm sure that the spaceship that I'm the captain of in that film, you know, Phil can be the Imperial Master or something, bossing me about on the bridge. You know,
setting me up there.
We'd be up for that. He's a really Simon has just got an amazing energy for a filmmaker. Only he would try and shoot an alien invasion in the middle of Birmingham with tanks and everything else thrown in. I just want to move on to another film that you're a part of. Before you answer any questions on it, know that several other actors in the cast have spoken very freely about the difficulties experienced on this particular film. I want to talk about Alien 3. Look on your face says it all, Phil. A really good friend of mine, Danny Webb, was also in Alien 3, and I believe you worked with Danny about 3 or 4 times on various productions. Also thinks very highly of you, said to say hello, hoping to twist Danny's arm and get him on the channel pretty soon. I mean, I've been told by 3 different cast members it was a bit of a nightmare shoot, with the script being rewritten as you went along, lots of days when you were kind of sitting around Pinewood doing nothing. And I mean, is that your memory of it, or am I?
It is, yeah. I'd just done a play at the Old Red Lion. A friend of mine had written a play, and I said I'd do it, and so I needed to earn some money, and Alien 3 came up. It wasn't much of a part written for me, but I thought, I'll do it. But then we'd go to Pinewood every morning, and they'd shave our heads because we had to be bald for some reason. I looked like a boiled egg. And then they'd sit us in these dressing rooms, and we'd sit there, you know, for like 8 hours, and then we wander out on set, and you go, oh! At something that wasn't actually there. And then with banks of cameras and and David Fincher going, do it again, one more. And it was the most boring 3 months of my life. 1 or 2 actors buggered off. I think Pete Postlethwaite was in it. I think he said, all right, I've had enough. I'm not coming back. And they were rewriting the script as it went along, and the producers kept turning up, all these dudes in baseball caps and wandering on set, and there was lots of shouting behind the scenes, and nobody quite knew what was going on. I mean, some good sequences in it, and he's a fantastic director, David Fincher. But,
he famously nearly had I think he said he had a mental breakdown when he was making it, and I'm not surprised. And
I wasn't really. I mean, I just sort of, you know, just shut my mouth, closed my eyes, and got on with it. But
took the money, and
all the gossip I got was from Ralph Brown. And Ralph Ralph would tell me, whisper in my ear, "Oh, they're going to fire Fincher on. No, they're not going to fire Fincher, and they're going to bring in a new this and a new that." And it just went on and on and on and on and on, and made us all a load of money, but it was really boring. It was really boring. I said that the worst thing you can do is a very small part in a very big film. You know, it's like watching paint dry for a living. It's awful.
Right.
I'd rather have a very big part in a very small film and actually have something to do, because that's my job. I'm an actor. You know, I don't.
Well, I mean, we've got one of each of those lined up for you. And playing Montgomery in Pegasus Bridge, I can promise you, even though it's a small part, will be a ton of fun and will definitely not be boring. I know I've got a load of Pegasus Bridge fans watching, so I'm going to mention that now quickly before I move on to Dickon's second X-rated question, which he's told me he can't answer until after 9 o'clock. But when you read the Pegasus Bridge script, which I'm terrible at promoting myself, so I am gonna do it this time, which I wrote. Phil paid me a wonderful compliment at the time, which I remember quite distinctly. He said the reason that you attached to be involved in it was you hadn't read a true World War II drama script like that in quite a long time, and you felt that there hadn't been a film like that in quite a long time. Now, since then, and of course, because various things went awry, which I won't get into now, but the film didn't happen when we thought it was going to happen and went into turnaround. We have had a couple of big World War II epics. We've had Dunkirk, which was the immediate one that comes to mind. And then, of course, we've had 1917, I think it was called. Both good films in their own way. But, I mean, they're also quite specific. One of them is all done in one take. And then Dunkirk is, a lot of people describe it as the biggest art house, most expensive art house movie ever made. I mean, do you still feel there hasn't been a film made like that in modern times?
I mean, 1917, of course, was World War One, not World War II.
No, absolutely. But I just meant the type of movie, you know.
Dunkirk was, I mean, it was right at the beginning of the war, and it was, you know, making a triumph out of a disaster. So it wasn't really a World War II movie, actually. It was about something else, you know, it was about British grit and all that sort of stuff. Whereas Pegasus Bridge was, actually had a story to tell, I felt it was a good script, so who knows? But am I not a bit old for Montgomery now?
Well, I mean,
I'm in my late 60s. He wasn't.
I would say that considering your playing age, as we know, is 48 to 57, and the wonders of modern makeup, plus the fact that Montgomery looks bloody ancient in every photograph that you see of him. If anything, you might be a bit too young. I don't know. But, you know, we'll make it work, Phil. That's the wonders of acting.
Yeah. We might need a bit of CGI.
Just want to thank, we've got 17 viewers watching at the minute. Just want to thank you very much for watching and supporting the channel. If you've got any questions for Phil, please chuck them in the chat. We've got a couple which I will get to. If you've got any other questions, do pop them in. Well, thank you, Phil, for that compliment about my writing. I do appreciate it. Dickon, your second question, sir.
Yeah. So, incidentally, I worked with Ralph Brown on a project that he actually wrote and sort of got off the ground, which was a triumph of budget as well. And in The Wall of Silence, there's one of the kids is a guy called Barry McNichol, who used to attend Anna Scher's with me, and who's just taken one of the production roles in Adam Deacon's new thing. You know, not Another Hood, but something about another hood or something, you know, which is coming out soon. And I am an old Anna Scher attendee. I was a couple of generations after Phil Daniels and Dexter Fletcher, but, you know, just a bit younger than Mark and Ray Burdett, etc. And so when I was growing up, I used to love Quadrophenia, Scum, Killing Time, Made in Britain. All those films was really what made me think the style of acting, the style of film. And then Mike Leigh's devising process seemed like amazing. Grown Ups was another one I remember. So I really remember those times with rose-tinted glasses, you know, Babylon, all those films. I just absolutely loved that whole era of London filmmaking. And I wondered if it was just my rose-tinted glasses from when I was a kid, or were those films really that good, and were they really that fun to make? Because they look like you guys had an absolutely fantastic time, and I'm truly jealous.
Well, you're not looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. It was a very important time because in the 70s and through into the 80s, there were working class dramas, and there hadn't been so very many before. My first big success was a Barry Keefe play called Gotcha, which I did at the Soho Poly Theatre and later at the Royal Court, and then also on TV. And suddenly, you know, the disenfranchised working class kids were getting a voice.
Yeah.
And that was followed by Quadrophenia. And early in my directing career, the first film I made was a film called Skullduggery with my own script. For
Steve Sweeney in it.
And I came with Sweeney in it, and I came to Anna Scher's, and I found Chris Pitt.
Yeah.
One of the characters in it.
I met Chris Pitt fairly recently, and we talked about that film, and because I remembered it really well, with him saying he was going to take a shit in the bed upstairs.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah.
And so, you know, suddenly you didn't feel that you were kind of outside the restaurant knocking on the window. You know, you felt that there was a space for you inside, and it was an important time. And the writers, you know, the Barry Keefes and the black writers, you know, the writer of Babylon. I mean, it was all kind of changing. It was all kind of breaking out, and you felt that there was something actually happening that was quite important. I mean, these things, you know, the pendulum swings and it ebbs and flows. But it was a great time, you know, and suddenly, you know, the Play for Todays were happening, and
the BBC the plays were brilliant, weren't they?
Yeah, they were, and you know, there were plays about squaddies, and Alan Clark was making films, and Mike Leigh, of course. Mike was tremendously important for me because
I've got him as a topic, so we're going to come on to him in a little bit.
Do you want me to save it for later, or talk about?
Yeah. Maybe don't cover that now.
I'll save it for later. But no, it's not rose-tinted spectacles. And Anna was very important, you know, because there she was. You know, these kids were being trained in a kind of way that you wouldn't get at a drama school, but was still very important. They learned how to improvise. They learned how to back each other up, and how to work together. And, you know, I was tremendously impressed because I was a bit older than Phil Daniels and Trevor Laird and all that lot. And when I went to see Anna work, I just sat at the back and watched the workshops, you know, and she said, no, you can't sit at the back, you've got to join in. And I was tremendously impressed with the sort of culture. The culture was of friendliness. The culture was, you know, so much of what people do in drama lessons and in drama schools, you know, breaking you down and building you back up again. This wasn't about that. This was about trying to bring the best out of people and saying that everybody has their own individuality, and that individuality is their genius, and it's useful, and you can use it. And she did great work, and a whole generation of actors came out of that place. You know, very important.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you, Phil. I love that answer. You made me feel all warm inside. I feel all glowy.
I think we have to make sure that we show Anna and Charles that particular clip as well, because I was only a student of Anna's for a couple of years, and actually it was through her and Graham that I met Dickon. It's also about those connections. I think if you teach people a certain way and you inject a certain spiritual vernacular into your class, you're going to attract other like-minded people.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things we're trying to do with the Outcasts, is make sure, you know, that we've got people who are. I think one of the most important things about being an actor, Phil, be interesting to see if you agree, is what you give to the other person that you're in the scene with, not just what you take, but what you give. And you hear this phrase, so-and-so's a really giving actor. And I've heard that mentioned about you by people in the industry more than once. Jason Fleming is another one who we hear that about all the time.
But it's a collaborative business, you know.
Exactly.
It's about listening, and it's about sometimes it's not about acting; it's about reacting.
Yeah.
You whatever the other person's doing is you respond to it, and if it's slightly different on take 3 than take 2, then all the better. You know, you just react to what you're given, and that kind of give and take thing is crucial, and it's the DNA of acting.
We definitely had a camaraderie feel at Anna Scheer's. We were always happy if someone else, Anna Scheer's, got the role instead of myself. I'd always be happy that it was someone from Anna's instead of Barbara Speaks or Sylvia Young's. You know, we were quite, so we were always quite tight as a team, as it were.
Yeah,
you know,
I get it.
We're always very pleased for Gary when he bags another detergent commercial in Australia and singing from the rafters.
King of detergents.
That's right, 7 now. So and the ones in Japan make him a lot of money. So that is a nice segue into actually the topic that I had. I mean, you worked with, what's really funny was I did a Mike Leigh marathon because the film of his that really spoke to me wasn't the first film of his that I saw, but it was Secrets and Lies, because I'm adopted. And it was around that time that I met him. I went to drop my first film that I'd made at his office. And I don't know if you must have been there. He's got that little office in Soho up the staircase, and the next level above him, there's a madam, which is always quite bizarre. Right, yeah. And then I kind of went to the wrong door at first and went, is this Mike Leigh's office? No, he's on the floor below. Oh, right, okay. And then he's got that thing where when you turn around to go out of his office, you always accidentally walk into the bathroom shower that he's got instead of going out the door, because it looks like that's the door out. And I did that as I was leaving and went, this isn't the way out, is it? And his assistant went, no, but don't worry, everybody does that the first time. And then just as I was coming out, he came in, and that was the first time I met him, which was in 1997. And the last time I met him was about 9 days ago, and he went past me on the street, getting left behind by a massive group that he was with, which included Alison Steadman. And I just went, Mr. Leigh, I'm still directing. I don't know if you remember me. And I said, this is just after you'd agreed to do this interview. I said, I'm going to be interviewing Phil Davis soon. He said, what are you doing now? And he stopped me and he asked me all these questions that I was completely not prepared for. I just wanted to thank him again. And I was trying to answer his questions, conscious of the fact that Alison Steadman and the rest were now miles down the road and had left him behind. But he strikes me as someone who's a really giving person and has time for you, whether you're, someone who's done a bit part in Coronation Street 50 years ago or the next big thing on stage. How did you find working with him? Because High Hopes, was that your first?
No. The first one I did a number of before that. I did the first one I did was called Who's Who, which was a play for today, I think, or a Wednesday play. Not terribly successful, but decent. Then I did Grown Ups, which is one of my favourites.
Yeah,
with Leslie Manville and Sam Kelly and Brenda Blethyn. Then I did a radio play called Too Much of a Good Thing, which is about when I played a driving instructor trying to shag one of his pupils. That Leslie Manville. And then there was a gap, and then High Hopes, and then Vera Drake and the others. I mean, it was extraordinary for me because when I first worked with it, it sort of changed my life in a way, because I started to think about myself very differently as an actor. Up until then, I'd sort of imagined all the characters I'd played as sort of an extension of myself, a potential me, And then suddenly with Mike, you're making this detailed investigation into somebody else's life, this fictional character that you're making up with him and doing these improvisations and not knowing what the story is going to be about. But that doesn't matter. You're just doing this thing of pretending to be this other person, but doing all this research. Where did they go to school? What's their uncle's second name? Did he like Beethoven? Can he ride a bike? Is he good at football? all that stuff, you know. And suddenly I started to think, you know, you stand at a bus stop and there's a long line of people, and I thought I could play any one of them. It would still, you know, it'd look like me. It'd be a short blonde bloke with a big nose, but all the same, I can do a version of them if I approach it in the right way. And it sort of changed the way I felt about myself as an actor and the way I went about my work. Now, I don't always do the kind of research on every job I do that you do with Mike Leigh. Of course, there's not time, and sometimes it would be inappropriate. But all the same, I started to think of myself as a proper artist and not just a kid who was sort of scamming it, you know. And he was tremendously important. And I always loved his films, you know. I remember seeing Nuts in May before I worked with him on the telly.
That's such a great film.
It's a great film, and you know, there we are, real people, you know, ridiculous people, just like us, you know, daft and outrageous and real, and I loved it, and I felt an immediate affinity with that kind of work. And you know, I first worked with him in 1978, and here we are in 2022, and we're still mates. You know, we're still talking about doing another one eventually where we can raise the money and all that. And I would have been in the last one, the Peterloo one, but I was busy in doing a thing in the south of France, so I couldn't do it. But yeah, he's a great friend, and has always been very encouraging for me when I started to direct, you know, and even in the theatre, he would come and see a run and give me notes, and he's always been very supportive. He can be a difficult bastard, there's no doubt. You know. He's not a walker by any means, but I think he's an tremendous original artist, original filmmaker, and I was and my association with him was tremendously important for me. Two really important figures in my life. One was Joan Littlewood, and the other is Mike Leigh. And the two of them changed my life.
Fantastic. I mean, your answers covered a wide topics there that any actors watching, and I know we've posted this in an actors group, and I'm sure there are some watching, would find that really interesting. And I mean, working with Mike Leigh and that process, you know, we'd all love that luxury of having a couple of weeks to develop a character or work on a character, because I mean he does do, I think it, you know, he books the actors, I think, for at least like 6 weeks, isn't it?
Longer. When we were doing Vera Drake, which was complicated obviously because this is a film set in the 50s, so I was playing a man who was born at the turn of the century. I mean, I'd been working for 3 months and we were still in the Second World War, you know. So the amount of research and improvisation and stuff you did to make this life a great well of experience from which you can draw before we started improvising in the little flat. And, you know, I think we've been working for about 7 months before Phil Davis, and my character, Stanley Drake, found out that Vera was an abortionist.
Right. Wow.
None of us had absolutely any idea until the police came to arrest her during an improvisation one Sunday afternoon.
Right.
Brilliant.
And
it was an extraordinary day because we'd been called in early and we were doing it, you know, Eddie Marsan's character, Reg, was getting engaged to our daughter, and so it was a tea party, and Stan's brother was coming over with his wife, and they had news because she was pregnant and all that. And there's this little tea party going on. And we were rehearsing up in Hornsey at the old hospital there before they rebuilt it. And there's a knock at the door, and suddenly there's uniformed police officers standing there. Now, I didn't know any other actors had been called that day. I knew Peter White was in it, but I didn't know what he was playing. Suddenly he's standing there saying, Mrs. And they walk in and they start to want to ask her questions. And obviously one feels, oh, they made a mistake because, you know, they've been married all these years. He knows she's not a criminal. He knows there's nothing. But you can tell by her face, she looks stunned. There's something wrong, you know. And one didn't know what it was. And they took her in the bedroom and And we were all waiting in the living room, and then they took her away. And we were all stunned. And then Mike came up to me and took me aside, and he did a thing he sometimes does. He says, "Come." We've been in character for about 4 hours, non-stop. We don't stop. You just carry on. And he came to me and said, "Come out of character just for a moment, but keep it on a low light," which is the sort of expression he uses. And he said, "What would he do?" I said, "Well, he'd go to the police station." He said, "Okay, go back into character, walk around the block a couple of times, and then go into the main hall. The main hall is the police station." So I go back into character, I walk around the block a couple of times, and I go into the main hall, and there's loads of people there, all dressed as policemen. The main hall has been transformed into this sort of pretend cop shop. There are people coming and going. There's a kid being arrested for something. And I sat there, he sat there, not me, he sat there for about 2.5 hours until finally they took him in to see Vera, and he said, "What's up?" And she whispered in his ear and told her what she'd been doing. And it hit him like a rock, hit me like a rock. And then it was back to the flat to tell the kids to go to bed, and I explained in the morning and arranged to see a solicitor in the morning. All this happened in one improvisation. It was about 10.5 hours.
Wow.
Finally, Mike said, "Right, come out of character." And of course, it's happening in one big improvisation, but happening in different rooms, different parts of the thing.
And it's all being filmed, right?
Suddenly one knew what the film was going to be about, because up to then there was just this family and this domestic drama and nothing much was happening. And suddenly you knew that was what it was going to be about. But up until then, all that work, one had no idea what the subject was going to be.
And all that improvisation, was it all filmed? People with little cameras?
Was it filmed? No, nothing was filmed.
He must have been wandering around with a massive notebook, taking loads of notes down.
Well, yeah, but what happens is then you go back, he cuts it up into its component parts, you go back, you reinvestigate the thing, and you distill it down, which is, what might be an hour and a half's improvisation might be just a brief exchange. Is the sandwich okay? Yeah. And then bit by bit by bit, and then you film it in the traditional way. You know what you're going to say and when you're going to say it. None of it's improvised, but that's just a way of dramatizing this massive event, and it became like a 15-minute sequence in the film. It's fantastic. It's like, it's one of the best days of our acting lives. We're all sitting there having a cup of tea afterwards, and of course you don't talk about it. The Official Secrets Act. Nobody discusses the improvisation. You don't say, "Oh, I thought you were going to do that." None of that. You just have to keep stum.
Right.
And you only know what you know. So if I'm playing a murderer, you won't know till I try and kill you. That's the thing. And of course, it's great fun, and it takes great discipline. But it's a great thing to get the opportunity to do. And of course, when you come to film it, this is what's really interesting, is you understand all the stuff, all the rich soup, all the subtext, all the things you didn't say and wished you had, all the things you nearly said and didn't, and all that, what you actually felt. Because sometimes, the line that comes out is the result of a very, very complicated thing going on in your gut, and all that subtextual stuff is all there for you. And on a scripted film, of course, you have to dig deep and make it all happen. But because it's based on an improvisation that happened, that's taken on a kind of quasi-reality, all that stuff is there for you. So you don't have to make it up, and it's easy to act.
Wow, that process just sounds incredible, and now I understand why that performance was one of the best of your career, and I believe you got nominated for a BAFTA.
I did. I won a BIFA, a British Independent Film Award, and a critics.
Some would say there's more honour in winning that.
Well,
and less politics.
Very pleased to have a gong, and I was nominated for a BAFTA, but Clive Owen won.
Clive Owen won.
Yeah, for Closer.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's move on from that.
Well, I'm not, is it?
No. Okay. Yeah, I know who I would have voted for. So, I mean, you said to me that one of your personal favourites things that you'd worked on was North Square, which, of course, we had a little clip of in the beginning, and you got to work with some fantastic actors in that. Helen, of course, and there's loads of British names in there that come in and do little cameos and guest roles. And Rupert Penry-Jones, I believe, was your kind of protege of sorts in the thing, and you're kind of the bastard boss. Delicious character to play with various designs on female employees and such. I mean, it only ran for one season, but I'm guessing that they were probably hoping it was going to get recommissioned.
We all thought it would get recommissioned. It won the Critics Guild Award for Best Drama, and Helen and I both won Best Actor and Actress.
Is it one of you
decided not to recommission it? I don't know why.
Is it one of your favourites? Because I mean, this and Whitechapel might be quite similar in this respect. And of course, Whitechapel, you got to do 18 episodes of that. Was it one of your favourites because you got a bit of an arc? You got several episodes. You get to play a character for a long period, and that's always nice for an actor because you feel like you get to have an arc and you get to do a bit more. And with Whitechapel, which I think is a great series. I haven't seen all of it, but I've seen quite a bit of it. Would that be why you liked it, or was there something else? I mean, tell us why.
Well, it's the character, Peter McLeish. He was fantastic. I mean, he's like the devil.
That's true.
He was utterly unapologetic, and he would do anything. He would cheat, he would lie, he would do anything to make his barrister's chambers the best. And remember, this guy's the clerk. I mean, he's not the boss. He's not the head of chambers. But the clerks in those days, anyway, had just tremendous power because if a case came in, they would allocate it to the various barristers. So if a really juicy murder came in, you'd want to make friends with the clerk to make sure you got it. And also, he was making friends with all the local villains in Leeds. So, any of your boys get nicked, you come to us, But also, he had this tremendous energy, a great love of life. The little clip you showed, his great love of Verdi and opera and Dickens and Shakespeare and everything. He was a force of nature, and he was wonderful, but he was utterly unscrupulous, and so he was that fantastic mixture, And in the story, Helen McCrory's character decided that he's too much. He's too strong, and I have to get rid of him. And they can't get rid of him. They can't. She loses. She loses that battle because all the boys love him. All the boys love him because he's a boy's boy, really. And so it was tremendous. And we were all very disappointed when it wasn't recommissioned.
I remember watching.
There was a plan afoot at one stage for the BBC to do a show just about McLeish and to make him an advocate, solicitor advocate. Give him a different name, but it was essentially the same character. So you could go in court and be rude to the judges, but that didn't work. And then Peter wrote Silk, with Maxine Peake. And I played a character called Mickey Joy, a solicitor, who was equally unscrupulous and nasty and funny. So we kind of moved on to that, really. But it was a great show because Peter had more stories in it. And unlike most legal dramas, it wasn't one case per episode. The cases were tumbling over each other. And it was much more about the internecine struggles in the barristers' chambers and all that than the cases themselves. So it was quite unique. Very clever and great writing.
Yeah, I mean, any show or movie, if it's good, it always starts with a good script. Something that Hollywood should spend more time getting correct and with less cooks involved, in my humble opinion. I mean, I want to mention Whitechapel as well, but maybe I would really like to hear your opinion on this. Have you noticed? a trend in current productions where there's less focus on character arcs and story, and getting those kind of core basics right. And we're seeing a lot of stories, particularly in some iconic series, getting shaped by current social and political agendas that are being forced. And in my view, there are definitely some iconic shows where they're being pushed to the front. And what made those shows great stories, great characters, arcs, and all those beats and tropes and things, they're all kind of falling to the wayside. And it's not the case with everything. There is some brilliant stuff being made. I'm not making a blanket statement, but I just wondered if you've noticed any changes like that, what your thoughts on it might be.
Well,
I know you don't watch a lot of television, Phil, as
I don't
you
watch
said
great,
earlier.
but stuff happens. Everybody's scared, really. Everybody's scared of giving offence, and it's difficult in these days in dramas to go against the grain. In some ways it's a good thing because no one wants to be offensive, but sometimes a bit of mischief, a bit of devil is a good thing. So I don't know. I have kind of mixed feelings about it. I mean, there probably were and have been too many dramas that start with some poor woman being attacked in an alley or something, and all that. And perhaps it's time we wised up about all that. But I don't know. They're all manner of agendas, and they're all fighting for space.
Mm.
And it takes a brave man or woman to go against the grain. And so the result can be that you left with sort of anodyne shows that are all saying the same thing in different ways.
Because you couldn't make Monty Python today. I mean, that wouldn't happen.
No.
But
you couldn't make a lot of things. It's probably a good thing. You wouldn't want to make the Alf Garnett show nowadays, would you?
Well, no, or Love Thy Neighbour, or you wouldn't want to make Mind Your Language either. I mean, there are some things.
And it's a different world now, and we've learned our lessons where all that's concerned.
Mm.
So that's a good thing.
Dickon, is it time for your past 9 o'clock question?
I've asked the romantic question about our past film life. I mean, I've just seen Phil in so many things I've loved, and I know that there's you look at Face ID, you look at the Sweeneys, the Winstons, and I mean, for me, he's part of that crop, and I'll never forget watching Quadrophenia, and I swear using Scum as well, but it's not in your Arsenal there.
No, I wasn't in Scum.
Yeah, I always thought that there's a lookalike of Phil when he was young in there. I know the actor you mean, Dickon.
But
looks like Phil.
Herbert Norville, Davidson Knight, Bugsy Malone, all Elephant Man. It's just such a great clutch of films from that era. And so you've really been a hero of mine since those days, Phil. And going to watch ID in the cinema, and and missing out on stuff, missing out on Nil by Mouth, missing out on Face and ID, and still loving them, and still not being bitter because I'm not in them.
I mean, let's talk about you as a director, because Dickon's mentioned ID, and do you know? I mean, when the first time I watched that, I just didn't twig that you directed it at all. I don't know if I was reaching for a Coca-Cola in the fridge as the director credit came up or what, but
a lot of people don't know. It comes as a surprise when I say I direct. You direct, because people think of me exclusively as an actor.
And it's got Lee Ross, who was in the same production as Bugsy Malone, as me and various other people at the Haymarket, and that Richard Graham, who is in it, is that right? See, he's a massively underrated actor. I love him.
Yeah, he was also in real women that I directed. Pauline Quirk.
That's right.
And,
I mean,
Frankie
do you get the same kick?
Reece Dinsdale was.
Yeah, Reece Dinsdale was the lead.
Yeah.
Do you get the same kick from directing as you do from acting? I mean, are you drawn to one more than the other?
It's different. But I did enjoy it. I mean, I enjoy the bit, of making the film. The bit I don't enjoy is, raising the money and dealing with the suits and with ID, we had 8 different sources of finance. So there were 8 different sets of people. It was like the Tower of Babel. You put them all in one room and let them fight it out when you're talking about the rough cut, and it's all very tedious. But I did enjoy directing. I made ID and I made my film Skullduggery and a thing for Channel 4, and I did one of the Prime Suspect 5, which won an Emmy. And I did enjoy making those things. But for me, I never wanted to stop acting. It was my first love, and you know what it's like with directing. It's on and it's off, and it's on and it's off. And I had 2 families to support because my domestic situation got a bit complicated, and I had to earn quite a lot of money to keep everything going, and I just couldn't do it if I was, taking a year off to direct a movie that subsequently wouldn't happen, So, and also after North Square, which is a big success for me, I was inundated with lovely offers of acting work, and it was about that time that I was sort of peaking as a director. And there just wasn't enough hours in the day to do everything. So I just sort of put it on the back burner and concentrated on being an actor, which, I've no complaints about that. It was lovely. But then suddenly 5 years has gone past and I haven't directed anything. And suddenly I'm sort of not on the list, And I never wanted to be, a gun for hire doing episodes of this and episodes of that. I wanted to make films or at least be the main. When I made the Prime Suspect, I was the only director. It was 4-hour TV thing, so it was all me. I didn't want to go in and do the second hour or the third hour or episode 19 of Heartbeat or something like that. So so I let it go, and I do miss it a bit, and every so often, I think. But one of the other things about being a director, it made me a better actor.
Yeah.
I started to realize when a shot was difficult, when the focus puller was having trouble. I'm thinking, oh, wait a minute, they're moving in and out, and he's on a longish lens, and there's not a lot of light. Yes, it's going to be tricky, and all that stuff that I didn't realize before when I was just exclusively an actor. And also, one of the things, I used to spend a lot of time directing, going up to actors and pushing their shoulders down and saying, relax, it's okay. It's a bloke walking through a door. If it all goes wrong, we'll do it again. Because people turn up on set and it's my bit, I'm nervous. Oh, for fuck's sake,
Yeah.
It's okay. Let's have some fun, And so I started to relax. I started to listen to my own notes, and I'd always been fairly relaxed, but what I mean. It was just a sort of. I learned a lot of things about screen acting from directing. And it made me a better actor, I think, and a more reliable one. I don't like actors who, I don't warm up till take 7. Well, sod that. Get on with it on take 1. Because we're always short of money and we ain't got a lot of film stock. This was in the days when we shot on film. So get there, be prepared, and do your best.
Yeah, that's a good piece of advice.
It was good, and I don't regret it. I did actually make a short film 5 years ago, called Midnight of My Life, about the great Steve Marriott from Small Faces.
That was the film that Leo Barkham-Biggs was in, right?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember. I actually paid to watch it online, Phil.
Well, a young producer came to me. She seemed about 10, and she said, "There's this script," and I read it. And I said, "Well, if you can raise the money, I'll do it." I thought I'll never hear from her again. And then suddenly she phoned up and said, "Yeah, we've got it." It was a short film. It was a 2-day shoot, and it was fun.
I was literally about to dash and get a Coca-Cola, but you went short on the answer for a change.
Oh, sorry.
So I just I was going to throw a question quickly while I do that from one of the youngest members of the Outcast creative, Sebastian Story. I think he's in his 20s, but his playing age is like 12 to 17. But bless him, he's one of our most enthusiastic members. So he's a really big fan of Doctor Who and Merlin, 2 shows that you've been in. Merlin was the one that actually it was one of the main reasons he wanted to become an actor, possibly also to get into being able to cast magic. I don't know. That would be nice if he could do that. We wanted to know what your memories were of. I know you're one of the actors. You don't like watching yourself, do you? After you've been in something.
Well, I don't sort of avoid it, but I don't religiously go back and watch my own. I don't think you learn very much from watching yourself, really.
No. What are your memories of working on Merlin and Doctor Who? Have you got any stories? And what was it like working on, I guess, 2 reasonably iconic shows? Doctor Who, very iconic. Merlin, very iconic to people of Sebastian's age range.
I remember on Merlin, I got to kill that guy, didn't I? The king. I got to kill him.
Gary's a massive fan of that show. He knows what you're talking about. He'll chip in if needs be.
Anthony Head's character. So I got to slay him. So that was good. And Doctor Who was actually a difficult one because, first of all, it's interesting because, of course, I was acting opposite Peter, who went on to be Doctor Who himself in another incarnation. I was playing someone who was gradually turning into granite, and so I had to have this sort of fixed arm. And it was supposed to be set in Rome, but actually we were filming in a quarry in Swansea, and it was the middle of the night, and it was October, and I'm wearing a toga, so it was freezing, and I had this thing on my arm. But apart from that, I can't remember a lot about it, really. It was just a kid when I did it and came back. I had no idea that Doctor Who was quite such an iconic show with such a loyal fan base, because I got inundated with cards I had to sign with my name on it and all that. And I get invited to conventions where everyone turns up dressed as various Doctor Who's, but I don't go anymore. So
well, I mean, if you've got
seriously, when I remember watching it when I used to see it all those years ago, it was plastic Daleks, and you could see the strings with the doors and all that. It's a bit more high tech now, but not. I know people love it, but it wasn't that important to me, if I'm honest.
Yeah, I feel that in recent years it's lost its charm a little bit. It's all a bit too fast and it's like a Michael Bay film watching an episode of Doctor Who now. You're in one scene, suddenly you're in another one, then you're in another one, then you're in another one. 50 facts have been thrown at you, and 2 characters who barely had chance to establish who they are, and then we're in another scene. And I don't
know, I've never seen one all the way through. I've got a son, he's 25 now, but he used to like it when he was about 13. So I used to watch it with him occasionally, but I had to nail my feet to the floor to keep.
When you're on our film, Phil, we'll make sure you've got a trailer with a full Blu-ray selection of Doctor Who's to keep you company in case you get bored while you're getting into character as Montgomery after wearing his uniform for 3 months in Mike Leigh fashion. Well, fantastic. I wanted to ask you about Riviera, which was a pretty big budget production that you were on. Is it fair to say that it was either the script or several weeks in the south of France that attracted you to the role, or both?
No, it was several weeks in the south of France, and a hefty fee. I'd been doing Poldark, and I did the first 2 series of Poldark.
Yeah,
and I got the feeling they didn't have much for me to do, really. My character was, because he was Poldark's sort of manservant, really. And I didn't want to be answering the door and serving up the drinks for another series. And then Riviera came along, so I went and did that. And then we were shot in Nice. It was very nice and comfortable, but I only did the one series. And it was a bit of a mess, to be honest, because I don't think anyone quite knew when the first 2 or 3 scripts were written how it was going to end. And there were 3 or 4 storylines all kind of vying for attention, and my storyline, I think, got a bit lost because
I thought it got cancelled, or is it going into a 2nd season?
No, it did 3 seasons, didn't it, Riviera?
I didn't make it past season 1. I will admit, I just was not engaged. I loved the look of the film. I liked the period it was set.
A nice looking thing, but again, I mean, not terrifically interesting. Not something I put on my show reel. You know what I mean?
And Dickon, you missed that, but Phil's show reel is 50 minutes. So when you've done as much work as he has.
I do have a show reel, a more modest one, with some of the later work. But because I was celebrating 50 years of actor, I made a 50-year show reel. There's a bit of Quadrophenia and a bit of King John, and right up to the to a little bit of King Lear, a 5-minute King Lear I did. So there's a little bit of everything, but these are my personal favourites.
You've just worked on something called Deuce, Deus, which is on the screen now. Can you tell us anything about that? That's the last thing that you've shot.
Well, it's not really, but it's never emerged.
It's the last thing listed on IMDb. Let's put it like that.
All right. Well,
I mean, do you want to plug it? Is it worth mentioning?
I don't know. I've never seen it. It was a science fiction film set on a spaceship, and I played the head of a kind of Elon Musk character. It was an interesting script, but we finished shooting that, I don't know, 3 years ago. I've never heard of it. I don't know whether it's this happens, you make these films and they never emerge, you think, oh, what happened to you? I hadn't even thought of it since I finished it, since you said it. But I suppose one of these days it might come out. We might find it in the returns section of the DVDs in some charity shop or other. But I did it and it was all right, I guess. I don't know. I've never seen it.
You got to work on Whitechapel. I'm jumping topics slightly with Hannah Walters.
Yes.
Who is now married to Stephen Graham and is, I mean, not only was she a pretty decent actress in Whitechapel, but she's now gone on to be a producer. And I wondered if you'd seen Boiling Point.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what you thought about it. Of course, my friend Jason Fleming's there. I thought it was absolutely fantastic.
Yeah, lovely film. I like Stephen. He's a great. We were going to make a film together, set in Belfast, but I have a problem with doing a Northern Irish accent, and so I passed on it. I wish I'd been able to do it, but I didn't want to be less than good. And so I had to pass. But,
that's interesting that you passed on it because you thought you couldn't do the accent.
Well, I'd only want to do it if I could be spot on.
No, I mean, I think that's credit to you because there would be other people that would take the job and the paycheck and
make a difference.
Just say when they get on set, tough luck. I'll sign the contract now. Fire me if you want, but I'm taking my paycheck. I know people that would do that, and it's great that you've got some integrity. And I mean, I don't know if you're aware of this, but from the rumbles that I hear, and my like that guy in Game of Thrones, I've got my spies everywhere. You're really highly respected in the industry. I can honestly say, and I'm sure Dickon's the same because he's the other half of the Spy Network. I've never heard a bad word said about you by anyone.
Yeah, well, that's nice.
That I've worked with, and when I said, Phil Davis is going to be Monty, hopefully in this film, and then I've got this other film, and hopefully I'm going to get to play your son. I'm putting moisturizer on every day to make sure that works for me. it's well, he had him very young, so that's part of the story. And Jason Fleming's the older brother, so there you go. Yeah, I mean, just people, and just I'm not talking about just people in the industry, but also people outside it. Just as soon as just not everybody knows you by name, but I'll say, look, just look him up on IMDb. Oh, that guy, yeah, he's great. It's really nice to know that about somebody, and that was one. Having heard that from so many people, that was one of the things that really made me want to work with you. Apart from the fact you're an absolutely super talented so and so, and one of the best in the business, in my humble opinion. There's one other topic I'd like to ask, and then I'll throw round to the other guest co-hosts to see if we got any last questions. Anyone in the chat, please chuck them in now. The last topic I'd like to touch upon, and Gary, Dickon, and Suzette think of one question for Phil before we begin to wrap things up, is what's your opinion on the class system, I suppose, that exists within the acting world, if you like, and to some degree the production world as well within the creative arts? Because I've been in the game a long time, and I went through the whole milieu of applying for arts funding money at one point for a project that looked like it was going to happen, and then somebody on the inside of that said, "Oh, all that money's already accounted for," and I'm like, "Really? But why am I filling out this 20-page application then?" And then you also have the top tier agents. I know you're with a very good agent, but and you have those same actors that get the same plummy parts, and there's also production companies attached to those agencies, and the money goes out the front door, but it comes in the back. And it just seems that network is getting tighter and tighter rather than wider and wider. And that those people that don't come through kind of RADA and the traditional routes, even though there's more ways for them to make things of themselves and make their own product, that class system to me does seem as hard to penetrate for some people as it's ever been. You came through the working class routes, a bit like my last guest. What are your thoughts on that? And do you see a lot of that in the industry? How do you feel about it?
Well, it was ever thus. It's always been the same. It's tougher. It's tougher if you're a working class kid, you want to be an actor. It's more difficult. It's difficult to afford drama schools. It's difficult to be able to live unless you've got some help from your parents and all that. Of course, it's tougher. And there has been, in the past few years, with programs like Downton Abbey and the great spate of Agatha Christie adaptations, the Eton-educated actors, some of whom are wonderful and very good. I'm not chippy, but it's different to the era we were talking about, Dickon, in the 70s and 80s, when it was kind of trendy to be common. It was trendy to be working class, and it's probably no longer the case. And the top jobs in the film and television industry, the people who commission stuff, are almost all privately educated. But I got bored with talking about it, really, because I don't know what you can do. You just have to be as good as you can be, and grab the bits of money when they become available. I don't know. I don't see a sort of solution. The other thing is, of course, when they're handing out the grants, and one of the most difficult things about getting a film made is convincing people that you are able to do it. And there are lots of people who talk a great game, but couldn't direct a tourist to the Tower of London. And there are a lot of people who are not very articulate, but are actually really brilliant, and so it's a problem. It is a problem, and it was a problem when I started out, and it's still a problem now. I mean, it's not such a problem for me because I've got 50 years solid work behind me, but I feel for the kids, and my family, my daughter might be an actress, but she's got all the parental help that she can she can get, you know, so she's not going to be starting from the same place that I started from. And it is tough. It is tough in that you take it on, but you know, it's tough everywhere. It's tough in the city, it's tough in the civil service, it's tough everywhere. But you know, when we decide we want to be an actor or a filmmaker or a writer or something, we take a big risk, you know, because it's not a job that people are not anxious to give you opportunities, and I think a lot of people get deterred because they thought I used to feel that when I started out, you know, always felt I was in somebody else's house, you know. This place was not my natural, you know. I didn't know what forks to use and knives to use when people took me out for dinner in the restaurants and all that. And I did feel kind of uncomfortable. But you know, a lot of the nicest and most supportive people I met were upper middle class, and you know, so there was no rules to it, but I did feel socially uncomfortable. It was a great advantage for me starting out with Joan Littlewood down at Stratford East, where it's like joining the circus. You know, there was no class system there. Thank you very much. But you know, it was different when you got to the Royal Court in the 70s, and everybody seems fearsomely articulate, and you know, you were just the kid in the corner. So, but you know, you have to adapt. But I don't know what I feel about it. There is a class system, and it's still active. And you know, Downton Abbey is still a terrible load of tosh, but massively popular. And I don't know what you do about that, really.
I think that people just have to find a way to make their voice louder. And I think the one benefit that they do have that didn't exist, you know, in the early 2000s, going back into the 90s, is now that digital technology is so available. And as you said, you can make a film on your phone if you can think of the right script and concept. And you've got YouTube, you know, there's people making lots of money with their YouTube channels that never would have been able to be a film critic in Barry Norman's day. We had a guest on the Critical Drinker who's probably one of the most popular film critics in the world now, because his videos have blown up, but his critique of material and his intelligent insight into the way that scripts are written and narrative and everything is absolutely incredible. So I mean, he's got that popular for a reason. He knows exactly what he's talking about.
Tough. It is tough. It's tough for lots of different people, different sorts of people.
Yeah.
You know, but all you can do is, you know, do your best and be better. You got to be so good. You got to write a script that's so good they can't say no to it.
Yeah.
Be so good at that interview, that audition, that they've got to give you the role. And when you do the role, you got to be so good they'll give you another one. That's the only answer.
Great. I mean, that's a really good summary on that. Suzette, question?
That's really interesting. And my students are watching, and they're entering in the business in adulthood from working class. So, just wondering, what would you say to them in this climate? Because I'm trying to keep them comfortable in their uncomfortableness. I'm glad you've talked about that. Because you have really, really stark moments in the class, and I say, how does that make you feel? Feel it here, so when you go on a set and you feel that, you know, you can get up and over it. But I've suggested things like that to them, to start making their own films, start filming themselves and doing their own scenes. Because fortunately,
that's the answer. Because, you know, if you're starting, you know, in your late 20s or early 30s, you know, you're going to be up against people who've got 10 years of experience that you haven't got. And so, you know, what you've got to do, I think, is try and find your own voice. You know, you've got to write something, or if you can't write something, find someone who can write something, you know, and find someone to direct it and put it on, bung it on. You know, I started as a director, my first film, Skullduggery. That was a play. I wrote a play and I sent it around to the theatres, you know, the Bush Theatre. And people sort of said, oh, you know, maybe all that. And I got fed up with that. So I said, "Sod it, I'll put it on myself." And I raised a bit of money from some friends. I'd just done a telly job, and I went around all the casts and made them all give me 25 quid. And I booked the Old Red Lion, and I designed it and I directed it myself. And then it was a success. It was all right. And out of that came a screenplay, and that got picked up by the BBC, and suddenly I'm the film director.
Yeah.
But nobody asked me, nobody gave it to me on a plate.
Yeah.
I did it by writing a play. And of course, it's got to be good. It's got to be a good play. But it took me, 18 months solid graft, going up, doing draft after draft after draft before I felt it was ready to present it. And so, that's the only way. If the door won't open, kick it down by doing something yourself. And that's the best advice I could do give to students like yours who are disadvantaged by starting late. It's too late for drama school, and a lot of people can't afford it anyway.
Yeah.
And some of them have got kids maybe, and all that. But it doesn't mean that you won't. You've got to make yourself. You've got to make your own chances.
Yeah.
Gary, question.
Yes, this has been really an inspiring sort of chat, Phil, and some of the questions I had you've kind of already answered. So I guess which are some of your great successes, North Square, for example, at risk of turning it all on its head a little bit, is there anything you think in your career you've thought, did a good job there?
So many, man. I can't tell you. There are some duds on there. Don't you believe it? They really are. I mean, one or two things that I wipe them from the memory bank. I have this facility of doing a job, and if it's less than satisfactory, I just pluck it clean out of history.
Yes. And if you could, you'd delete it from your IMDb.
I delete it from my brain. And so, not everything works.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean, you learn something. Even, sometimes you have to be bad until you can be good. And, not everything is gleamingly brilliant in any actor's CV. So, don't beat yourself up. Just do what you can. But, some of the films, nobody's ever going to see them. And that's probably just as well.
I really hope that's not the case when we work together. Dickon.
Phil, if you could get the money and you could direct it, star in it or not star in it, what is the untold story that you feel like you want to tell?
Oh, well, I wish I knew that, because then I'd be able to write it. I mean, the difficulty is finding that solid gold subject. Every so often you get an idea for something, you think, oh, that could work. I did write. I was commissioned to write a comedy series about a golf club, because I'm a terrible golfer, but I'm keen as mustard. I'm awful at it, but I go and play, and it's really quite amusing. I play up at Muswell Hill. It's really quite amusing to have the characters up there. And I wrote a sort of pilot for it. I sent it to a producer friend of mine, and she liked it, and she sent it to Sky, and they liked it, and they commissioned another script. And then there's somebody changed job, and Sky didn't want it, and there was a possibility of doing it at the BBC, and we got as far as doing a table read, and I got a fantastic cast. I had all manner of wonderful actors to do the table read, and then we got the thumbs down from the channel controller, and so that was that. But I wouldn't mind doing that. I direct it. I wouldn't be in it, I don't think. But
right.
But that would be fun, because I'm rather obsessed with golf. It's a bit like screaming.
I'm picturing a British version of Caddyshack.
No.
That's probably not quite what you had in mind.
It's a very interesting game, because it's such a mixture. You've got the taxi driver playing with the High Court judge, And in any other context, they would never talk to each other. They are playing golf with each other, and there's something sort of obsessive about the game. It's a balance between relaxation and effort. It's a bit like acting sometimes. You're really at your best when you're not trying too hard, it's just an interesting thing. And also, it's the only game that I can think of where you're only ever playing yourself. You're just hitting your ball. If you're playing tennis for someone who's really good, you can't get the ball back. Or football, you can't get a ball off them or whatever. But this is just you. You hit your ball and then you hit it again, then you hit it again, and you try and get it in the hole. And so the struggle is with yourself, and that's quite interesting. So I wouldn't mind having a go at that, but it seems unlikely now.
Well, you never know, and
you never know.
I know exactly who you're talking about when the head person at Sky moved to another channel that we won't mention, and there was a lot of dynamics there. We had a big project in with the same person, and then it all got very complicated because the new people that come in didn't want to touch anything someone else's hands had been on. So
there was that, and also they decided everything wanted to be bright and cheery, and this because it was a golf club and quite a lot of elderly people, so it was a bit kind of autumnal in tone. You know what I mean? But it was very funny. I thought so anyway.
I feel like I should be your caddy one day when you're going up to Muswell Hill, so I can observe some of these characters. And
I wouldn't want anyone watching me play golf. I'm so terrible.
do you get to wear the ridiculous trousers?
No, I don't do any of that.
Oh, okay. Well, Gary's got lots of ridiculous pairs of pantaloons. If you ever need to borrow some for a golf tournament, he can supply you.
I'll post them up
with clothing. Is there anyone? My final question, which I've got, is there anyone in the industry, in particular, that you really, you'd really like to work with? Be that a certain actor who you've admired their work that you haven't worked with yet. There's not many people left on that list when it comes to British actors. Let's be honest, or maybe a director or someone, not including me, obviously. Someone else.
People often ask me this, and they say, are there any parts you'd like to play? But most of my career, I've been doing new work. And it's the surprise of a script by someone you haven't heard of, dropping through the letterbox, and you think, oh, this is interesting. Or a new director who's working in a different kind of way, So no, not really. There's no one I think, oh, I'd really love to work with him or her. But I mean, there are lots of directors that I admire and films that I enjoy. But it's just, I'm still here and I'm still going, and I just hope to carry on and keep stretching myself and find new voices, find new characters to play that I haven't done before, and that's the big challenge for me, is keep shape shifting.
Well, don't worry, Phil. I wrote 30 scripts in 2020, so I'll give you plenty. I'll give you pennies to keep you busy. Guys, I think round of applause. Fantastic guest. It's been a real honour having you on. I mean, listen, we could talk for another hour about your CV, and that we barely would have got through one decade. I hope maybe you could come on again another time. It might be. I know we're going to do a stream sometime later this year with some younger actors who are just starting out, and have them on as like 4 or 5 of them, maybe graduates, as guests. Obviously, people that are not in the system we discussed earlier. Might be great if you could, if you're available, of course, during your busy schedule, you could come on and be a bit of a guest for them for half an hour for a quick Q&A, because I think your answers today have been fantastic. There's some real gold nuggets of advice there. Some of it might seem fairly straightforward to us who've been in the industry for a long time, but young people have a very different perception of things these days, as I've come to realize as I've got older. So I think there's a lot of advice. We just had comments actually in the chat. Thank you so much for coming on. Very inspiring from Josie Ayres, who's one of the actors on the wall behind Suzette there. Anyone else want to chip in quickly before we
No, just really glad to be in your internet presence still. An absolute honour.
It's a great pleasure. I love talking about myself, obviously.
And thank you so much for everything you've said today. I'm actually going to rewatch this so
Yeah.
I can really take on board what some of you said. So thank you, Phil.
It was a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
All right. Good night, all.
All right. Thanks very much.
Bye. Bye.
So everyone, that was the legend that is Phil Davis, available for work and always interested in leading roles. So those people that are watching, if you have that sort of stuff for him, do please pass it along. So guys, we've got some interesting stuff coming up with the Outcasts. Of course, we have our classes are back in 2 weeks' time, because we're not on this Monday, are we? Because it's a bank holiday.
Monday week.
So we're back. We're back Monday week. That's Highbury in Islington above the brew house and kitchen. It's a drop-in acting class. You can just turn up. Please bring cash. And once you've been once, you can book in advance, and it's even cheaper. It's very cheap. And then Suzette, where's the Birmingham class?
The Rainbow Pub in Digbeth.
The Rainbow Pub in
Lovely
Digbeth.
Rainbow.
And since it's been rejuvenated, the area, it's now safe to walk around there at least until 9:30 p.m. So it's
a joy here. Don't we worry about it.
Since Suzette moved to Birmingham, it's all changed. There's rainbows every night. It's just, fantastic stuff happening. And Gary, what's the venue of the Outcast class that you're going to be teaching before the end of the year in Australia? Remind us that again.
Oh, it'll be the Opera House, obviously. And I'll be live streaming the event from the main theatre.
Fantastic. Wonderful. We really look forward to that. Please include fireworks at the very least. And if you could provide Dickon and I with first-class travel and also a boat to be in
Suzette,
the bay.
how dare you?
Yeah.
Well, no, but Suzette can, Suzette will come as well. But Suzette only travels by private jet, but me and Dickon will be all right with first class tickets, So, fantastic. Guys, have you got any stuff that you've watched on telly that you want to recommend to people watching dramas? I'm talking about good quality acting, good quality production. Anybody watched anything on Netflix this week, or have you been too busy?
I started watching Dark Desire, and with the Spanish audio, English subtitles.
Yeah, I caught the first couple of minutes of that, and it was on dub, so I thought I've got to pause this and watch it. I can't do the dubbing voices there.
No.
Any good? Worth watching?
Well, my Spanish is improving. It's a lot. It's a lot. It's here, there, and everywhere. But I'm thoroughly enjoying it. It's a bit naughty. Ooh.
Obviously that's too good for Dickon. Can't watch that then. We don't want to be encouraging him.
No.
I watched Inventing Anna, which is a 9-part drama series on Netflix. A true story about a Russian-German young girl of the age of 25 who convinced everybody in New York that she was a German heiress who had millions of pounds tucked away, and she was introduced to all the higher-ups of New York society and fleeced them all for money. It's from Shondaland, Shonda Rhimes Productions, and I've got I really like a lot of her stuff. She produces some really, really good work. V. Marshall says sexy scenes, spelt with a Z. I'm not sure what that's about.
Yes, they're sexy.
Very sexy. There's a few sexy scenes in Inventing Anna as well. But I'll tell you the problem I have with the show, and this is a benchmark for me with any drama. All of the characters in it are horrible. The person who's fleecing everybody in New York is a narcissistic, just fleecer, grifter, who's sort of thinks herself above everybody else, but also has deep psychological problems. But when they actually come out, they're not really enough for you to then want to be on her side. Each episode's told from the point of view of a different character around her orbit, and the reporter doing the story is the other main character. And she's also incredibly unlikable. As are the people that are getting fleeced. There are a few people in the lower classes, like the hotel workers and her co-workers at the newspaper. Those characters are all the characters that you really like, but it's not their story. So don't you find, if you're watching a drama for 9 episodes, if you're not invested in somebody's journey, don't you think that's an issue? Because I do.
Yeah. I think they're mixing it up with the fact that people like to voyeur and they like to see bad things happen to other people. This is the thing that people, that people watch things for.
Yeah.
But now we do want some more humanity and softness.
The one show that navigates that tricky water where everyone's horrible but it works is Succession. Has anybody seen Succession? Yeah. All the characters are horrible, but like J.R. Ewing, you love watching them because they're horrible in a delicious kind of way. And it's the interplay between those characters that makes it makes you want to watch more. And the acting standard in Succession is just amazing.
Yeah.
Who would have known Macaulay Culkin's brother would be such a first class act? Yeah, phenomenal show. V. Marshall saying the reporter was likable. No, she was not. What are you talking about? Awful woman. Yeah, so brilliant. Okay, well, great to have you guys on.
Thank you.
All the heads of all the chapters. Gary, absolute pleasure. Dickon, I'm so glad that you've committed to coming on and being my co-host on the top 10 romantic comedies. That's what you get for not doing westerns. So it's going to be fun having you on there. I'm not sure if we can get 10, but we might have to do 5 on that. Coming up on the show on other episodes, we've got the wonderful Craig Fairbrass, who's currently filming in South Africa, and he is actually going to be doing the top 10 crime genre shows with me. My list and his list. That's going to be really interesting. He's done a lot of interviews recently, and I thought, rather than just do another interview, why don't we talk about crime genre shows? So that's going to be a great episode. It's going to be quite exciting. I've got Richard Oakes and Adam Leader, who have just finished directing their second or third horror film. These are 2 independent film directors, which is called Feed Me. They sent me a preview copy of it to watch. Great film starring Neil Ward, an actor whose work I really admire. He's kind of like a sort of working class Tom Hardy, and by that I mean real working class. It's not a film I could watch again. There's quite a lot of dismemberment in this. Not one to watch while you're eating your dinner. Let's put it like that. But cracking film. So they're going to be coming on. I've got James Boosh and Rain McCormick, 2 other indie directors coming on. We're going to be talking about horror films, top 10s. I'm hoping to get my friend Sharon Duncan Brewster on the channel at some point. She's just done the June movie. It would be fantastic to get her on. We've also got Victoria Jeffrey, whose late father was an extremely well-known actor. She's going to be coming on, and I'm hoping to get Finty Williams to come on the show as well, who is Judi Dench's daughter. So I have got some women lined up as well. It's just a question of dates and times, and can you get the people, and who's willing and who's not. But if you're interested in coming on the show, whether you work in front of the camera or behind it, whether you work in theatre, whether you're a board games designer, if you're a creative, we would love to hear from you. I have the son of the creator of the Lone Wolf books, Joe Deaver. I don't know if any of you remember those. They were fantasy books where you turn the pages. I'm going to go to page 15 now. That leads to Dickens' basement. What's in there? And that next part of the book was, in the adult section. But that was a fantastic chain of books. There were like 30 of them, I think, that came out in the 80s and 90s now. And his son, Joe Deaver, sadly passed away a few years ago, but his son is resurrecting the series. And I caught an advert for it on Facebook. See, sometimes they're useful. And I reached out to him because I knew his dad and said, would you come on the show and talk about the book series? And he's agreed. So that's another one. And we've got Chris Jones, who used to run the London Screenwriters Festival. He's got a feature film coming up called The Impact. He's going to come and talk about that on Sunday, I think the 7th of May or 9th of May, whichever one it is. So, been working quite hard to get people on the channel and been doing a lot of work and all the technical bits, as you see. I mean, writing out Pluckosaurus is a very demanding job. So, yeah, brilliant. It's only just noticed. So there we go. So, yeah, fantastic. Guys, thanks so much for watching. There's still 8 people watching, even after Phil's gone, which is very nice of you to tune in. Check out our other videos. We've got other interviews. We've got other actual live shows that we did in lockdown, live performances. We're going to be doing more with that in future. You also want to keep an eye on the Outcast Facebook page, because we have the post office scandal we're going to be taking on as a stage production. It's going to be on in Birmingham on the 19th of October to the 22nd, and London, we don't know the dates for that, but around that time. Looking forward to doing that. So from all of us here at Outcast headquarters, thank you so much for tuning in. Never forget to tell those that are important in your life that you love them. And Almost Home, we'll see you again very soon.